Today we're going to be giving you our final playoff seeding and our playoff series predictions. First, we go through every seed 1 through 10, and for the West 1 for 11 since it's such a tight race. We're going to give a quick recap of what we think of the teams, and then we're going to go on to the playoff matchups and our predictions. My name is Bogar. Shout out to my boy Super Mario Hoops 24 for collabing with me in this video. Basically, I'll be giving my takes first, and then he'll be giving his. And yeah, guys, hope you enjoy. I think the 11th seed is going to be the New Orleans Pelicans. They actually started off the season as the 1 seed for a while, but a bunch of injuries came to haunt them and they started dropping very quickly. And now still without Zion, who's most likely going to be out for the rest of the season, and without a couple other key players, they're probably going to end up dropping in the standings, and I don't see them competing for a playoff or play-in spot.
For the Los Angeles Lakers, I think they will finish as the 11th seed. I know they've played pretty well recently, but they are going to come up with a weird stretch. I believe they got some away games coming up. So I don't know if they're going to be able to, get over that hump.
I think the Dallas Mavericks are going to be 10th in the West. They're barely going to scrape by and make the play-in. They have too much talent to not make it, but they also don't have enough supporting cast to really make a run. Luka and Kyrie are 3 and 8 when they play together on the court.
For the 10 seed, it'll be the New Orleans Pelicans. And it's really tough because of the year that they were having, like when Zion was healthy. They were up there as the 1 seed. So it's unfortunate for them because last year they had a great year and they came back, but
at the 9 seed, I have the Oklahoma City Thunder. I think these guys are doing extremely well for their young age, and they have a lot of young talent on their team. I don't know exactly what to think about the Thunder yet because they're a very good team, but I don't know if they have quite the experience yet to escape out of the play-in and make the actual playoffs. But at the same time, they're so talented that I really could see them escaping the play-ins and making the normal playoffs as a 7 or an 8 seed. But overall regular season record, I think they're going to stay at the 9 seed.
The Oklahoma City Thunder, who I think will finish as the 9 seed, they've been playing really good lately. It's hard to believe they're such a young team. I think they're one of the youngest teams ever, but they really don't play like it. They just have so many guys. I just have a lot of trust in them right now. They seem like that energizing team. There's always an energizing young team that has come out in the play-in and showed out. And I think this year it's going to be the Thunder.
At the 8 seed, I'm going to take the Minnesota Timberwolves. These guys just got Karl Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards back, and they've been grooving as of recent, winning their last couple games late. We're seeing what Karl Anthony Towns provided for this team, and this is what they really missed. Nonetheless, this is a sneaky team, and Mike Conley's been getting hot, which is the perfect time to do so.
So my number 8 seed, the Dallas Mavericks. I just don't like the way that Luka and Kyrie have kind of fit well together. It still seems like a growing process. It's going to take some time. I think their defense kind of took a hit, getting rid of Dorian Finney-Smith.
And the team that I think is going to fill this last play-in spot in the West is the Los Angeles Lakers at the 7th seed. LeBron James just came back. They have enough talent on this team to make this final push to get a couple wins and higher their ranking. Besides, it's LeBron James, and even though he's 38 years old, he can pretty much do anything to carry a team on his back and get some wins if he had to.
So my number 7 seed, I have the Minnesota Timberwolves. Getting Cat back. They're going to get Ant back pretty soon, most likely. McDaniels, Kyle Anderson, they've really stepped up with other guys gone. And I think Mike Conley has had probably his best stretch of the season. I think that they'll finish in that 7th seed.
At the 6th seed, I'm going to put the Los Angeles Clippers. These guys are a very talented team, and it was looking pretty good for them until Paul George just suffered a terrible injury, so I don't really know the exact future of this team. It does seem like they have enough of a record that they're going to make the playoffs and escape the play-in, but future-wise in the playoffs, it's looking like they're probably not going to win round 1 if Paul George is going to stay out. They do still have Russell Westbrook and Kawhi Leonard, but I don't know if that's enough to beat a team like the Grizzlies or the Kings by themselves.
The Golden State Warriors will be the 6th seed. It's just hard to expect them to overcome a lot of these other teams given how bad they've been on the road this year. By far, of all the teams that are in the play-in or better, they're the worst road team out there, and I don't know how that looks for them in the playoffs.
At the 5 seed, I'm going to be taking the Golden State Warriors, and honestly, there's really not much I even have to say here. It's the same big 3 every single year in and year out. It's the same thing. These guys just dominate. Plus, it's Steph Curry. Come on now.
So the 5th seed, I think it will be the Los Angeles Clippers. It's going to be hard for them to move up anymore. I thought maybe they were going to get into a rhythm, but now with Paul George injured, and we don't really know when he's coming back, it's going to be hard to dictate that. They've also been kind of up and down all year long, so I'm going to go with them as the 5th seed.
At 4, I'm going to take the Phoenix Suns. I think they're going to close out this season strong. They're going to maintain this 4 seed, and they still have Kevin Durant coming back on the way, so this 4 seed is an understatement. But even with Devin Booker and other players having injuries throughout the season and earlier in the season, they still maintained a winning record, and they're not doing too bad for themselves. And I don't even think it really matters what seed they are as long as they still have Kevin Durant coming back healthy. But he needs to be healthy.
Phoenix Suns will end up as the 4 seed. Kevin Durant, they said he's supposed to maybe be back earlier than what people originally thought, so that's good news. Having him, Chris Paul, and Devin Booker, it provides 3 guys that can work. I mean, this team does have some experience. Kevin Durant's a multiple-time champion, so I like their chances at least being a top 4 seed and getting home court advantage.
At 3rd place, I'm going to put the Sacramento Kings. They've had an absolutely outstanding year. No one expected what they're doing right now. Domantas Sabonis has had an amazing season. De'Aaron Fox has been one of the most clutchest players of the league. Kevin Huerter has been an outstanding 3-point shooter. Their bench is very deep. They have guys like Malik Monk and Harrison Barnes who can shoot. And to top it off, they have the beam to light every single time that they win a home game. But I still think they potentially have a deep playoff run in them.
I think that the Sacramento Kings will be the 3 seed. They've had a great year. Definitely cannot count them out. But one thing about them is that they could win on any given night. I think they're probably the most balanced team in the Western Conference, both at home and on the road. De'Aaron Fox is probably the clutch player of the year. Domantas Sabonis has probably his best year of his career. There's just so many guys on that team that you can count on to just give a great performance. I got the Kings at 3.
At number 2, I have the Memphis Grizzlies, and this team is back to being as competitive as they were before, and they could be a scary matchup for anyone in this Western Conference. It seems that now that all the distractions are out of the way, they can just go back to being them and playing basketball.
I think the Memphis Grizzlies will be the 2 seed. They're kind of getting their guys back at the right time, so I think now they can kind of focus their attention more so on between the lines on the court. And I think that's good for them too because, they were a really good team last year. Injuries hurt them in the playoffs, and I think this year they're going to want revenge. So I think they'll finish 2.
And at number 1, I have the Denver Nuggets. Out of all the years they've made the playoffs in the past, I think this is the most help that Jokic has had, and this is their best shot to make a deep run.
And then the Denver Nuggets, I think, will be the 1 seed. I feel like there's not much to explain here. We all knew that when all these guys are at least healthy to a degree, like that they're going to be a team that's contending basically every year. The last few years that we haven't really seen that because they weren't. They made some recent additions like Reggie Jackson at the deadline in the offseason with Bruce Brown. It should be interesting to see how this all plays out.
Now in the Eastern Conference at 10, I'm going to take the Chicago Bulls. This team looked they were an absolute disaster until they started winning, and now they've won 6 of their last 8 games. They looked like they were going to finish maybe 12th or even 13th in the East, but now they've moved up to 10, and I think they're going to make the play-in. And we still have to remember they have both DeRozan and LaVine who can both score 30 points a night, so they could cause trouble in this play-in tournament.
Toronto Raptors will be the 10 seed, but they've just been really inconsistent this year, starting with Fred VanVleet. He was an all-star last year. Now this year he's kind of been way too up and down. Scotty Barnes hasn't taken the step that I think people hoped he would, and just their depth has not been that great. Neither really has their shooting.
At 9, I'm going to take the Atlanta Hawks. I don't think there's really a big problem with the team. I think they're just mid all around. Trae Young, but I don't think his style of play really results into winning. I couldn't even tell you exactly what's missing there because they have talented players, but they just have to change something up.
I think the Atlanta Hawks will finish as the 9 seed. Atlanta just hasn't really had a great year. Firing their coach, the Trae Young rumors, I think that they'll probably finish 9th.
At 8, I'm going to take the Toronto Raptors. There was a bit where this team looked like they wouldn't even make the play-in, and then they started winning some games. Siakam started showing up, Scotty Barnes, OG started showing up and putting up stats. Fred VanVleet's kind of a weird player at this point. He's definitely inconsistent, and they're definitely good enough to be in this play-in tournament, but I don't think they'll make much noise in the playoffs if they even make it.
I have the Chicago Bulls as the number 8 seed. Started to pick it up better ever since adding Patrick Beverley. They've really had an up and down season as well, but it seems like of these teams kind of in the play-in mix, they probably had the biggest turnaround since the trade deadline. So I would expect them to kind of make a little bit of a run near the end of the year here.
At 6, I'm going to put the Brooklyn Nets. Ever since they traded away KD and Kyrie, these guys haven't really been doing too much. They're definitely not as bad as we thought they would have been without these guys. Mikal Bridges is holding his own pretty well. Spencer Dinwiddie's having a decent season, but this just isn't a team that's going to be able to compete with these playoff teams.
I have the Brooklyn Nets as the number 7 seed. It hasn't really been looking too good after trading Durant and Kyrie. I just don't know if they've been able to match the chemistry yet. There is a lot of a weird mix of veterans and young guys on that team, and I think that they'll be enough to get into the playoffs, but
at 6, I'm going to put the Miami Heat. Obviously, they do have Jimmy and Bam, who's a solid duo and can put up their own, but Tyler Hero's just too inconsistent. Kyle Lowry and Victor Oladipo are just a shell of themselves. This team just doesn't have exactly what it takes to make a big push either. Although Jimmy's determination and heart that he plays with could win them an extra couple games.
The New York Knicks will finish as the 6th seed. New York has also had a resurgence here this year. 2 years ago, they were the top 4 in the East. No one saw it coming from a mile away. Last year, it felt like they took a step back, but this year, the young guys have kind of bought in more.
At 5, I'm going to put my own guys, my New York Knicks. I think these guys have had an outstanding bounce back from last season. Jalen Brunson has really elevated this team and made them into something good. As well as Julius Randle returning to his old self and playing like an MVP caliber player. But I also got to add RJ Barrett, Quentin Grimes, Obi Toppin, possible 6th Man of the Year Emmanuel Quickley, guys like that, all the young guys coming together and really holding their own as well.
I think the Miami Heat will be number 5, have stepped it up to a degree lately. I will say it seems like they've kind of been up and down though. The biggest question is just Kyle Lowry.
At 4, I'm going to put the Cleveland Cavaliers. These guys have had a really impressive season. I think they're just short of being championship contenders, but they are a very talented team. And we have to remind ourselves this is only their first year playing together. They have a lot more chemistry and growth to come on to, but I wouldn't count them out to make a massive playoff run, even if they don't win at all.
I think the Cleveland Cavaliers will be the 4th seed. Donovan Mitchell's had a great year. They've had the best defense in the league for most of the year, so I like what they're doing in Cleveland.
At 3, I'm going to put the 76ers. I think this is Joel Embiid's MVP season once and for all. It seems like the Harden Embiid duo has finally clicked. This is the best basketball I've ever seen Embiid play in his career. He's averaging a league-high 33 points per game. They're only a couple games back from having the best record in the NBA, and I think they're going to make some noise this playoffs.
Boston Celtics will be the number 3 seed, and a little bit inconsistent at probably the worst time. Maybe it just could be burnout because they started off so hot. That really could just be what it is. It might not be much of anything, but I think they'll finish 3rd.
At number 2, I'm going to put the Boston Celtics. It looked like just about all season long that they were going to end up as the 1 seed, although I wouldn't worry too much about that, as at the end of the day, they still have Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, a dynamic duo. Any game is winnable when those two are on the court, and they're looking to finish the job from last year, return to the NBA Finals, and win.
I think the Philadelphia 76ers will finish as the 2nd seed, and Joel Embiid looking like an MVP candidate. I think they'll finish 2nd.
And at number 1 in the Eastern Conference, I'm going to put the Milwaukee Bucks. It's hard to ever doubt Giannis, especially as he's in the middle of his prime right now. This is an even deeper team compared to when they won the chip a couple years ago, and this is scary for the league.
The Milwaukee Bucks are number 1. Giannis has done a great job this year, and so has Drew Holiday. Portis is probably a 6th Man of the Year candidate, and Brook Lopez is probably a Defensive Player of the Year candidate, so...
Now in the Western Conference, I think the 2 teams that are going to make it out of the play-in are going to be the Lakers and the Thunder. I think the Timberwolves and the Mavericks are going to get knocked out. I think the Lakers are going to be the 7th seed and the Thunder are going to be the 8th seed. Therefore, in that first round matchup, the 1-seeded Nuggets versus the 8-seeded Thunder, I think this is actually going to be a very tough series, and it's going to be closer than a lot of people may think. I don't think the Thunder have enough experience quite yet to be able to take on the Nuggets and defeat them in a series, but I do think they're going to take a couple games away from them, and I think the Nuggets are going to win in 6. Because we got to remember, the Thunder's starting lineup is pretty much the youngest lineup in NBA history right now. So as skilled as they are and as bright of a future that they're going to have, I don't quite see them winning just yet. The 2-seeded Grizzlies versus the 7-seeded Lakers. I might get a lot of heat for this, and this is a very hot take, but I'm going to go with it. I think the Lakers are going to win this series in 7 games. As always, you can't ever count out a team with LeBron James and Anthony Davis. The Grizzlies are a very cocky team. They're also a little bit inconsistent at times. There's times where they can go on rough stretches and lose a couple games in a row. And I think with the type of season and everything surrounding their season that they've had this year, their ego is going to be a little too high, and they're going to be a little too confident going into these playoffs as the 2 seed, and I think they're going to drop some games to the Lakers and end up losing this series. I wouldn't be too surprised if the Grizzlies do win in 6 or 7, but this is going to be my hot take of the video. I think the Lakers are going to win this series in 7. The 3rd seeded Kings versus 6th seeded Clippers. I think the Kings are going to take this in 5 games, actually, especially if the Clippers don't have Paul George and he doesn't return from his injury. I think the Kings are going to get by pretty easily. Because realistically, the only star that the Clippers have left is Kawhi Leonard, and I think the Kings will be able to stop him if that's all they have to really focus on. The Kings could win at home and on the road. They have a very balanced team and play style. I don't think they're going to lose to this team without Paul George. And even with Paul George, I think the Kings would still win that series in 7. So I think regardless if they have Paul George or not, the Kings are going to beat the Clippers. And the 4-seeded Suns versus the 5-seeded Warriors, I think the Suns are going to take this series in 6. This could change drastically depending if Andrew Wiggins comes back or not. If Wiggins comes back, I could possibly see the Warriors winning this in 7. Although if Wiggins does not come back, I don't think that they're going to be able to pull this off. But this also depends if Kevin Durant's going to be healthy or not either. I mean, he is supposed to be healthy before the playoffs even start. So going off that, I think the Suns are going to win this game in 6, as the Warriors definitely struggle on the road. I don't think they quite have enough to beat the Suns, especially with Kevin Durant. Now in the second round, it'd be the 1-seeded Nuggets versus the 7th-seeded Lakers. This time I do think the Nuggets are going to take out the Lakers in 6 games. I wouldn't say the Lakers have no chances. They could have a chance versus any of these teams. I wouldn't completely count them out, but the Nuggets still once again have a lot of power. I don't see anyone really stopping Jokic once again, just because he's such a threat on anywhere of the floor. If AD locks him down from scoring, he'll make some amazing passes. They'll free up some teammates. If they try and stop his passing, he's going to be able to score. He's just going to be able to create winning plays no matter what. As well, I think LeBron James is going to be a little bit gassed out by this time, as I think in that first series that they do beat the Grizzlies, he's going to put all of his effort in and kind of overwork himself to get that series win, and then burn himself out a little bit for this next series and not quite have the same amount of willpower. And then in the second round, the 3rd-seeded Kings versus the 4th-seeded Suns. Like I've said before, I think the Suns' seeding is an understatement because they've had a lot of injuries throughout the season, and this was before they had Kevin Durant, as Kevin Durant only played like 3 games with them in the regular season anyways. But I think the Suns are going to have no problem beating the Kings in either 5 or 6 games. The Kings will catch fire on 1 or 2 of the games, steal a couple from the Suns when the Suns will have some bad nights, but overall the Suns are a much more talented team. They have better players, and I think they'll have it. In the Western Conference Finals, the 1-seeded Nuggets versus the 4th-seeded Suns. This is another tough one. I think I'm going to have to take the Phoenix Suns in 7 games. I mean, once again, just Devin Booker, Chris Paul, Kevin Durant, DeAndre Ayton. It's just such an overpowered team, and it's really hard to guard all 4 of those guys at once on the floor. Because Devin Booker and Kevin Durant could score the ball from absolutely anywhere. Chris Paul is going to be making all these plays, and he has the players to do so. He could also score as well if he really wanted to, and DeAndre Ayton is one of the best big men in the league, like it or not. Although he's definitely under the radar and not many people give him attention since he's the 3rd to 4th option on his team, he's still a top 5 to 7 center in the league, and people forget about that. So I do think they're going to take the Nuggets out in 7, as they're just going to squeak past them and win that extra game on the road. Now, out of the Nets, Raptors, Hawks, and Bulls, I think the 2 teams that are going to come out of the play-in for the East is going to be the Nets and the Bulls. Now the first matchup would be the Bucks and the Bulls, 1 versus 8 seed. I think the Bucks would sweep the Bulls. It's just too hard to stop Giannis, as well as their surrounding team with Drew Holiday, Defensive Player of the Year Brook Lopez, and possible 6th Man of the Year Bobby Portis. Along with Chris Middleton, who still hasn't really found his groove yet coming back this season healthy, but he's probably going to find that out in the playoffs. Although I do think the Bulls will put up a good fight, I just can't see them coming away with any games versus the Milwaukee Bucks. The 2 versus the 7, the Celtics versus the Nets. I think the Celtics are going to win this game in 5. Once again, the Nets are not as good of a team as they really look because Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving kind of carried them to the record they have now. They're not a terrible team with what they have now, they just don't seem to have as much experience, and I don't think they're going to be able to put up with a team like the Celtics. They might be able to sneak 1 game away at home, but the Celtics are just too overpowered. Now the 3 versus the 6, the Sixers versus the Heat. I think this is going to be a very entertaining series, although the Sixers do have more talent than the Heat. Obviously Embiid playing like an MVP and probably going to win it this season. I think he's just overpowered against the Heat. I don't think Bam Adebayo is going to be able to contain Joel Embiid too much, and I don't think Jimmy Butler's the guy that's going to be able to put a team on his back that much against a good team like the Sixers. Especially if James Harden continues playing as well as he has been, I think it's over for the Heat. Although they do play with a lot of heart and passion, and they're still a talented team, I think they're going to be able to steal a game or 2 versus Sixers. I'm going to say the Sixers in maybe 5 or 6, probably in 6. Now the matchup I'm actually most looking forward to, and not even just because I'm a Knicks fan, but the 4 versus the 5 seed, the Cavs versus the Knicks. This is probably going to be the best series in the first round of the East. 2 very talented teams that match up very equally. But I'm going to have to choose the New York Knicks in 7 games versus the Cavs, and this is simply because they're just a much deeper team, and I think they're going to win all of their home games. With this playoff atmosphere in Madison Square Garden, it's nearly impossible for a team about equal as them to come in and win some games. And now, obviously, with a much better team compared to that, you're adding Jalen Brunson, adding Josh Hart, and the younger guys getting more experience. I think they can really hold their own. Plus, they've had the Cavs number this year, and they've been able to stop Donovan Mitchell pretty well. In the second round, it would be the 1 seed Bucks versus the 5 seed Knicks, and although it sucks for me to say, I think the Bucks would win this in 5. And just like I said with their last series, I think the Bucks would cruise through this. Giannis Antetokounmpo once again is unstoppable, and I don't think there's anyone on the Knicks that could really stop him. I think the Knicks would be able to steal 1 game at home and catch the Bucks off guard, but this shouldn't be too much of a problem for Milwaukee. And then the Sixers and the Celtics. Oh man, I think this is going to be the best series so far in the East, and this is tough. I mean, this is a very well balanced matchup. The Celtics obviously with JT and Jaylen Brown averaging about 56 to 57 points per game as a duo, but then the Sixers having Joel Embiid, who's going to be the MVP, and James Harden. And I think a huge factor of this series is going to be how well Robert Williams can play defense on Joel Embiid. And as long as he's healthy and on the court and playing like he did last year, he might be able to contain him a little bit. I'm not saying completely clamp him down, but he might be able to hold him to maybe 25, 26 points per game instead of averaging 34, 35. As well, historically, especially within the last decade, the Celtics have absolutely owned the Sixers. They've pretty much figured them out, and I don't know if they've ever lost a series to them within this last decade. So like I said, I think this is going to be a very tough and entertaining series. I can see a lot of beef going on between these teams, but I'm going to have to take the Boston Celtics in 7, winning the series at home in Game 7. And in the Eastern Conference Finals, the Bucks versus the Celtics. I think the Bucks are going to win this series in 6. Giannis has so much more superpower compared to his previous teams. Both Brook Lopez and Jrue Holiday are playing the best basketball they have in years, and they added shooting in Joe Ingles and Jay Crowder. Personally, I think the Bucks are going to be the hardest team to beat in the league this year, and I just can't see them not making the finals. And although the Celtics are a very good team and they made the finals last year, I just don't think they're as deep as a team anymore or as experienced as the Milwaukee Bucks. As well, as much as I love Jason Tatum, I just don't think he's at Giannis's level. Now in the finals, I have a rematch of the Bucks versus the Suns. Both teams returning for a finals matchup with a even stronger team on both sides. I think this is a very important title game for both teams because Giannis getting his second ring this early in his career really establishes his legacy and what's to come within the next decade or so of his play. And for the Suns, it's important for many players as both Chris Paul and Devin Booker would have their first ring, establish that they are championship caliber players. Kevin Durant will get his third. I don't know how much this really counts towards his legacy, but it's still impressive nonetheless. And honestly, no matter which way the series goes, I really think this is going to go down to Game 7 as both of these teams are insanely talented. I could see them matching up well against each other. But in Game 7, my winner is going to have to be the Phoenix Suns. I think adding Kevin Durant makes this one of the best lineups we've ever seen in NBA history. As I was breaking down before, their core 4 of Chris Paul, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, and DeAndre Ayton is absolutely insane, and I don't know how you're even supposed to expect someone to defend against that. Ayton and Lopez are a good matchup, Giannis and KD is a good matchup, Chris Paul and Jrue Holiday are a great matchup, but I just think the Suns have the edge with Devin Booker as Chris Middleton doesn't seem to really compare to him. Before the Suns got KD, the Bucks definitely had the edge in matchup wise and they had a deeper team, they could definitely take them on. But adding another star in Kevin Durant really pushed them over the top, and I don't think the Bucks have the same matchups anymore. So I'm going to have to go with the Phoenix Suns as the 2023 NBA champions.
My 1 seed Denver and my 8 seed Oklahoma City Thunder. You know, OKC is a tough young team, and I don't know if Denver's quite ready for that. So I actually think Denver will win this, but in 6 games. They'll catch them sleeping maybe in Game 1, and then another game in there I'll give them because they're not going to quit for sure. So I got Denver in 6. 2 seed Memphis and my 7 seed Minnesota. This would be awesome because it's like a rematch of last year, and that series last year went pretty far distance as well. Man, this is going to be tough. I think it'll go 7, but I'm still going to probably roll with Memphis. Seems like they have a little bit more taste of the playoffs than this Minnesota core. With my 3 seed Sacramento Kings and the 6 seed Golden State Warriors, I think the Sacramento Kings will win in probably 5 games, which might seem crazy. It could be 6, but I'll say 5 games. You know, the Warriors have just been too bad on the road. Like, I feel like they'll lose this series essentially in the first couple games. The Warriors need to be like perfect on at home, and they need to steal one on the road every series basically throughout the playoffs, based on where I have them. So I just don't see that happening. So I got the Sacramento Kings beating them probably in 5. The 4-seed Suns and 5-seed Clippers. It really sucks that Paul George just got hurt, because I probably would have actually leaned toward the Clippers here. You know, just out of being safe, I'm going to go with how it was 2 years ago when these teams played. Suns in 6. You can't count against Kevin Durant. It's hard to bet against a team that has KD, Chris Paul, and Devin Booker, and also like DeAndre Ayton, who's probably like seen now as like the 4th key element on that team. I mean, that's just a tough team. So in the second round in the West, I think the 1-seed Denver Nuggets and the 4-seed Phoenix Suns. I think that the Denver Nuggets will win this in 7 games, which might seem crazy because, you know, I was just propping up the Suns, but, you know, Denver has been insane at home. They're almost like invincible on their home court. They've also been better on the road than Phoenix. I could very well see them coming out. I mean, I'm sure they still have in the back of their mind a few years ago when they played in the playoffs, and they're like, well, Jamal Murray, if he was healthy, we probably would have beat him. That's, I'm sure, what they're saying. I think Jokic still has a riff with Cameron Payne, who's still on that Phoenix Suns team, and they went at it in that series. I'm going to go with the Denver Nuggets in 7. I think that they've just been the more consistent team this year. It's not like kind of expecting them to throw it all together at once. Like, Denver's had a full year under their belt to get together, and I think that they'll actually win this series. The 2-seed Memphis Grizzlies and the 3-seed Sacramento Kings. This might sound crazy, but I'm actually picking the Sacramento Kings to win this. The Kings have the perfect balance, I think, in the Western Conference between on the road and at home. You know, like, they could beat you on any given night, and I think they're more likely to steal a game in Memphis than Memphis is to steal a game in Sacramento. I know Memphis has almost been invincible at home as well this year, but they're also really a hard team to predict because sometimes they'll play better, it seems like, with Ja Morant or without Ja Morant, and then like the next game they played better with Desmond Bane, and then he's out, and then it's like without him they play just as good. So I don't know, it's really hard to gauge Memphis, and I'm gonna go Sacramento here. And then in the conference finals for the West with Denver and Sacramento, this is so tough, and I think honestly it'll go down to the wire. But I got Denver winning in 7. I think that ultimately this is where the experience, like, it can get you about this far for Sacramento. Having pretty much not a whole lot of experience, maybe underrated though, just because Harrison Barnes is a champion. Kevin Huerter's been to the conference finals. Sabonis has been to the playoffs multiple times. So, I mean, there's just a lot of guys that do have experience, but I mean, come on. Like, Denver's already been this far as well. And then pretty much a lot of their core guys were on the team then. So I think Denver will go to the finals in 6 games. I don't know if I just said 6 or 7 before that, but I'll say 6. So in the Eastern Conference, the 1-seed Milwaukee Bucks and the 8-seed Brooklyn Nets. This will probably and unfortunately be a sweep. You know, there's always usually at least one sweep, and this is probably the best case to pick one. The Nets are on the downhill slide. I'm gonna go with Bucks in 4, but I could very well see the Nets winning at least one game. My 2-seed Philadelphia and the 7-seed Chicago. This is a really interesting one because, you know, we know how great Joel Embiid. He's almost like invincible against the Chicago Bulls, but at the same time, James Harden has struggled a lot over the years against the Chicago Bulls. You might have like a weird balance there in between. I'm still going to pick Philadelphia to win this series, but I think it might go 6 games actually in a playoff format. The 3-seed Boston Celtics and the 6-seed New York Knicks. This would be really tough. The Knicks did actually get them a couple weeks ago, but I think Boston will win this one in 6. And then my 4-seed Cleveland and 5-seed Miami Heat. This is kind of tough, but I'm going to go actually Cleveland in 5. I don't think the original pick of Cleveland is tough. I'd be pretty sure with that. It's just picking them in 5 games does seem crazy just because what we've known out of the Heat over the past few years and how competitive they are. You know, like, it seems like Miami is one of these teams that's always like locking down the star players and stuff like that, but they really haven't done that with Donovan Mitchell much this year. And while they can lock down, I think that the Cavaliers can almost do so at a better rate. Yeah, but we know what Donovan Mitchell's going to bring. We know what Jared Allen's going to bring. It's just a matter of kind of the younger players with little to no experience. The Milwaukee Bucks and the Cleveland Cavaliers, we've seen what the Bucks have done all year long. I know they're only separated by a couple games, but I mean, Giannis is arguably the best player in the league. Drew Holiday is playing like the best version of himself in probably 4 years or so. I think that just all year long, he's kind of stepped up big time. And I think Chris Middleton will start to get into a groove by then as well. So I got Milwaukee in 6. Then Philadelphia and Boston. I think Philadelphia will win this in 6 games as well, I'll say. Embiid, it seems like the past few years, like they've had some injury unluckiness. Last year, Embiid got injured before the Heat series. Then he was playing on the torn meniscus against Atlanta. Like, they probably should have been to the conference finals, maybe one or both of those last 2 seasons. And then the year before, like, they also had injuries. The only time that they probably have in the last 4 or so years, they lost on a Kawhi Leonard quadruple bounce shot. Embiid will lead them to the conference finals for the first time in the era around him. And then in the Eastern Conference Finals with the Bucks and the Sixers, I don't know. I think actually I'm going to pick the 76ers, and that might be a huge mistake because what we've seen proven out of the Bucks. But I mean, Giannis has played some really big dudes and really tough dudes that have made it hard on him, guys that have put up a wall against him essentially. But he's never played Joel Embiid in the playoffs. That's what I'll say. And I think, like, you know, James Harden, it's basically now or never for James Harden, you know, because he wants to get paid in the summer. And this might be his last great chance at a championship. So I think that they'll move on to the finals and they'll play Denver. I think that the NBA Finals prediction, it'll go 7 games. And man, this would be good because Jokic and Embiid going against each other. I'm going to go with the Denver Nuggets, unfortunately, for the Sixers. It's just Jokic has been proving. I think that this is kind of what he's after at this point, because I feel like it seems like the narratives have kind of switched, and it looks like maybe Joel Embiid will be named the MVP. I could be wrong about that, but it seems like the narratives are starting to like turn a little bit. But I feel like Jokic is going to be like, okay, so if we're going to discredit me in these ways for the MVP award, why don't I get the MVP that matters the most, and that being like the finals MVP? And that might just be what he does. I think that they got, like, you know, Aaron Gordon, who they could throw on Harden or on Maxey at points to make it difficult on them. You know, I think Jokic is big enough to hold his own in the post against Embiid. You know, if Embiid like brings him out more, it'll be harder to guard him, but at least like backing down, like he's definitely strong enough to hold his own. I'm gonna go with the Denver Nuggets to win the championship. Yeah, man, appreciate you having me on. Thanks again. But I'm excited to see how the rest of the season and the playoffs go, and hopefully we're both right to an extent. But yeah, man.
As always, I hope you guys enjoyed. Shout out to Super Mario Hoops 24 yet again for joining me for this video and collab. If you did enjoy, make sure you leave a like down below to see if we can get 25 likes on this video. If you do enjoy weekly NBA content, make sure you subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video.